Hey there, guys. Welcome to another week of school. I want to thank you and commend you on the work that you've been doing thus far for these first two modules. Keep it up. Stay in the race. And so, with that being said, let's first take a look at our syllabus. And as you'll see, we enter our first thematic unit because these previous ones were just the welcome module and the introduction one, and now we enter our first thematic unit, which is part of the larger conversation, which is the human experience. And this first thematic unit is entitled Communities and Us. And as you can see, we have our first essay and accompanying brainstorm. So without further ado, let's go into our module now. So, this is us, Hyper Kermit. So we go into our module. I always makes me laugh. We go into our module, Hyper Kermit there. And we go into the third module. And also, guys, I want to again remind you of the help that we have with Brianna, our pal. So make sure to reach out and attend sessions, and it's always helpful and an awesome thing. So thank you, Brianna, for your work so far. And yeah, guys, so join in. So let's go into student view. So we'll see it how you see it. And this is us, Communities and Us. So for this first paper, it's actually founded upon two central concepts, and those are communities of practice and discourses. You're like, whoa, Mr. Godoy, what are these words? Well, we're about to learn. So the first thing that you see is this folder where we'll find these notes that will help to inform us. So the first concept, communities of practice, actually comes from this article, A Brief Introduction to Communities of Practice by, if we say it the French way, we'll say Etienne Wenge. So Etienne Wenge is an educational theorist, and this is the article if you want to take a look at it with a greater specificity. But I actually have these notes where I've synthesized what you need to know for this paper. Now, you don't have to become this huge expert on these two concepts, but you do need to know enough so that you can apply them and use them as lenses, which is the whole idea for this paper. So let's go ahead and open here the notes. And yeah, so communities of practice. So a community of practice, you'd be like, oh, a community. How is that different from communities of practice? Well, check it out. Here's some salient traits of communities of practice. First off, they have a shared objective / goal. They're a learning community. Now that's huge. A learning community where the learning happens through interaction with other members. For example, a tribe surviving or engineers working on similar problems. I remember there was a series on BBC One, and it was, what was it called? I think it was called The Human Planet, and it was about how our species has been able to survive across the most remote and harshest of locations. And so that survival is definitely a shared objective or goal of a tribe or group of people. Now, as you can see here, a community of practice can be either professional or personal. So everything from a tribe surviving to maybe being in a basketball team, that's a little bit more personal, or maybe being a skateboarder, a street skater. Professional, maybe it's your career. Maybe you work at a dentist office and you're a dental assistant, and so that's your community of practice. So see, so make that little mental note. They can be professional or personal. And here are some terms for communities of practice just to inform you. So a community of practice has a domain. And simply put, a domain is just the topic of interest. So what is it that you are learning and growing together in? Like, what's the topic, right? Are you in a community of practice that collects stamps? Then the domain would be stamps. And the community is just the actual people in that group, right? Now, shared practice. That's a cool thing. Shared practice are tips and tricks or knowledge or resource that is passed on from individual to individual to more efficiently and effectively reach the shared goal or shared objective. And, I actually want to read to you a part from the article here that is awesome. It's about nurses. So let's open the article. Okay, so he talks about the domain, the community. Check this out. Let me find it. I like this part. So, nurses who meet regularly for lunch in a hospital cafeteria. Lunch maybe 2 in the morning, lunch maybe midnight. The shifts for nurses are very brutal. But look, so nurses who meet regularly for lunch in a hospital cafeteria may not realize that their lunch discussions are one of their main sources of knowledge about how to care for patients. Still, in the course of all these conversations, they've developed a set of stories and cases that have become a shared repertoire for their practice. So the shared practice is just those tips and tricks and resources that are passed on. So for example, let's say I'm a nurse and you're a nurse and it's 2 in the morning and we're meeting for our lunch there in the lunchroom, right? And we're like, hey, how's it going? And I'm like, oh, you know what? I actually have a patient in 2D where, he keeps complaining of pain in his left leg. And I've tried putting his leg, up, or I've tried this medicine or I've tried that method, and then the person I'm speaking to, they say, hey, I had a patient exactly like that with those same symptoms, and I tried those things and they didn't work out. Listen, I actually tried this thing and that worked. So right there, they pass on to me the shared practice, and that, my friends, is a community of practice. There's the learning through interaction, and there's a nice demonstration of that there. So because nurses have the goal of palliative care, which is seeking comfort or relief for people in pain, right? So in that instance, that's the shared practice. That the trick that you just passed on to me, that's the shared practice, that shared knowledge for better achieving our goal, right? Okay, so you might be thinking, oh, okay, does that mean that my neighbor and I are community of practice just because we're proximal to one another? Not necessarily. Sure, your neighborhood could be a community, but a community of practice is actually far more focalized because it's a learning community with a shared objective or goal. So it's way more focalized in scope. So do make that distinction in your mind. So let's actually return to our notes, and this is important. So if in this case, for our 2 foundational concepts, if the community of practice is the what, then the discourse is the how. It's like, what do you mean, Mr. Godoy? I'm intrigued. So first off, this concept, the second concept, discourse with a capital D, mind you, because a discourse with lowercase d actually means like a conversation. Like if I were to say, hey, what's the current discourse on prosthetics, lowercase d, that's a conversation. But discourse uppercase D is the key term that we have our social linguist here, James Paul G. It comes from this article, and you guys can check out if you want to see this in action and with greater detail. So let's go ahead and open up our notes for discourse. Remember, you don't have to become experts on these concepts, but just know enough so that you can use them as lenses for this essay that we're going to do. It's like, what could it be? What could it be, right? So, did I just open communities of practice? No. Okay, so check this out. If the community of practice is the what, it's the learning community with a shared objective, shared goal, then simply put, the discourse is, I like this here, it's the identity kit. And that's how to act, talk, value, and often write. And this is a direct quote from James Paul G., our social linguist here. Discourses are ways of being in the world. They are forms of life which integrate words, acts, values, beliefs, attitudes, and social identities, as well as gestures, glances, body positions, and clothes. Yeah? Wow, that's pretty comprehensive, isn't it? So think of it a lot like the lens through which you operate. Like, for example, we said that maybe you work at a dentist office and you're a dental assistant. So first of all, the lexicon that you have, the specialized language concerning your field, is part of the discourse. The values that you have of hygiene and accuracy with tools and with the job that you do, those values are part of the discourse, right? The clothes that you wear that go with your job, that's part of the discourse, right? As a dental assistant. And here's the thing. We all have many discourses. It's not just one, right? If we say that our class, English 1A here, is our community of practice, right? It's a learning community where the learning happens through interaction and tips and tricks are passed on and such. So the discourse is how it is that you be a student in 1A, right? This is just a little FYI. So James Paul G makes the distinction between what he calls you don't have to get into these nuances so much in your paper, but it's just for your knowledge. So a primary discourse is the first discourse that you acquire. So if your first experience with socialization is with, say, your parents or your grandfather or your grandmother, or if it's foster care, whatever it is, that first experience with socialization, they passed on to you values, they passed on to you attitudes, they passed on to you a lens through which to see the world. That's your primary discourse, okay? And they can vary across ethnic groups, economic groups, regional groups, like where it is that you live and so forth. The secondary discourse is everything that is beyond that, right? Because if primary is speaking to one, right, and then secondary is speaking to two, so everything beyond the primary or central discourse that you learn beyond that's secondary discourse. So your time at the skate park and developing as a skater, or your time at the stamp collectors club, all of those are secondary discourses. And then interestingly enough, there's this arbitrary hierarchy in our society of which career paths, like let's take it professionally, of which career paths bring along more prestige or more money. James Paul G calls those dominant discourses. So things like a lawyer, a doctor, things like that. The thing with discourse is that when it's acquired through enculturation is just learning through interacting, right? Which is the point of commonality between both community of practice and discourse. The learning is happening through interaction. So yeah, it's not like you can, like, for example, if I'm in law school and I can sit through all the lectures as possible and go to class and study and take tests on how to be a lawyer. You see, I can acquire this book knowledge, this theoretical knowledge, but it's not until my internship at the law firm where I, get in the pond there with the other lawyers and brush shoulders, and it's the application, right? So that's the portion, that's the enculturation, that's where I begin to obtain my discourse. In truth, that's all you have to understand. If you're like, whoa, okay, this is so technical, Mr. Godoy, I'm not sure if I get this, I have a game for you that would actually help a lot. So check this out here. Click this first one, Community Practice and Discourse flashcards. And I actually recommend that you print this and cut these out. These will be 2 flashcards. And for community practice, here's the main things that we just talked about, of things that you have to remember when it comes to actually applying it to this paper. And then the discourse community, which is the identity kit. Print these out and cut them out so that you can have them before you. Now comes the fun part. You're like, oh, what does Mr. Godoy have in store for us? So click this one, Examples of Communities. and do the same thing. And so print it out and cut these out. You see this? So cut this out, cut this out, cut this out, cut this out. They're pretty funny, huh? Michael Jackson super fans, birthday clowns, and very varied too. So cut those out and crumple them into little balls. Put them maybe in a cap or in a little box or something, and just shuffle them. Okay, and let's say I draw into the bag, and let's say I take out I don't know, Sandwich Fan Club. Let's say, okay. So then the idea is to try to see, okay, how would Sandwich Fan Club be a community of practice? Okay, let's see. First of all, I see here it's personal. It's not wouldn't necessarily be professional. The shared goal. What might the shared goal be of a sandwich fan club? Well, maybe learning more about sandwiches and or appreciating them more. How can members learn through interactions? Well, if maybe there are conventions of sandwich lovers, or maybe through Reddit or something, or maybe there's like meetings, right? So that's how the interaction happens. What could some tips and tricks be of the Sandwich Fan Club? Maybe combinations of ingredients to make it taste better, like which ingredients go better, like Dijon mustard and dill pickles or something like that. Those tips and tricks would be the shared practice there. So okay, so it'd be like, so I'd have the flashcard there, right, and that crumpled ball that I just opened, which was the sandwich lovers sandwich fan club. So the next, okay, cool, I could put down communities of practice, and then I pick up Discourse. So it's like, okay, what might the identity kit be like? Okay, what might some values be of the sandwich fan club? Well, I would probably think, I might think maybe balance and composition in sandwiches. How to get like the right amount of ingredients, like not to overdo it with another. So maybe composition and balance in sandwiches, and how to play with the different flavors and tastes could be some of the values there. The actual lexicon, the languages, right, would be like specialized names of ingredients, right, or breads, or hams or something like that. So play this game, and I'm sure it's going to help with the concept. Let's check these out. This is a fun one. And also too, I'm sure that our pal Brianna, if you guys meet, maybe you guys can play this too for a bit. Okay, so there's that. The next one, so that now we went through that. Okay, check this out. Here's a real life example. We talked about how community practice can be a tribe surviving, right? So check this out. You and I have human neighbors, right? Living next to us. Well, there's a tribe. What was it? I think it was Tanzania. Let's see. They're called the Maasai. Tanzania and Kenya. Okay, so this is where they inhabit. Where the Maasai inhabit. Southern Kenya, northern Tanzania, and they have as neighbors lions, guys. Oh my gosh, we have humans, but they have lions. So check out this video. And as you're checking this out, bear in mind, okay, what's the domain here? Remember, is the topic of interest, right? What's the community, like who's in the community? And what's the shared practice? What are the tips and tricks passed on to better achieve the objective or goal? So once you have that, and you've taken some notes, then go ahead and respond to that. And then also reply to at least one classmate's post. And then by Sunday, of course. The next one is actually the essay prompt. I'm going to leave that for the next video. Yeah, I just want to make sure that I cover everything for this video. Yeah, so then lastly, there's another discussion board for discourse communities. So if the Maasai video one is for communities of practice, then this one is for discourse communities. So stay tuned for the more info on the paper. It's coming up in the next video.